Hi, this is Kathy with Barefoot Mountain School of Herbs, and in this video we're going to talk about identifying, processing, and using yarrow. The information presented in this video is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant to give any medical advice, diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. Please do your own research and prayerfully make your own decisions regarding your use of herbal medicines. Now, yarrow is a perennial herb that emerges in the spring, and it's usually ready for harvest by the end of spring, and sometimes then it'll bloom again in the fall, so you can have another batch in the fall. It was used historically as a styptic herb and saved many lives during the Civil War. It kept a lot of people from bleeding to death during the Civil War. So nowadays we use yarrow not only just as a styptic, but we use it as a blood regulator. It somehow intuitively knows where the blood should flow. Like, for example, we might use it to slow excessive menstrual bleeding, but it's also used to bring on periods in women that are not having one or that are having problems with it being irregular. So it works both ways in that way. And also we use it to promote blood flow and venous insufficiency. So, that just it seems a little bit odd that it both clots the blood and promotes blood flow, but it seems to know exactly where the blood should go. Now they've done some studies, and it's due to the vasodilatory effects. It's why it's so good in venous insufficiency, and it's recommended nowadays by many modern herbalists for patients with varicose veins. It's working very well for that. So then we really shouldn't be surprised, I guess, that lab studies are showing that it also regulates blood pressure. And we're going to look at a couple of studies on these things. So this first study is on PubMed, and it is blood pressure lowering, cardiovascular inhibitory, and bronchodilatory actions of Achillea millefolium, which is, of course, yarrow. Let's see, this was done in April of 2011, and they say here that it describes it's hypotensive, which lowers blood pressure, cardiodepressant, vasodilatory, and that is the veins dilating and getting larger so that there's better blood flow, and bronchodilatory, and that is the bronchial tubes expanding and allowing more air in. So they're talking about its effects not only on the heart but also the lungs and circulation. And they found down here, they found why it acts as it does, and it indicates that yarrow exhibits these things: hypotensive, cardiovascular inhibitory, bronchodilatory effects, and it didn't mention the vasodilatory again, but it's including that, and which explains its medicinal use in hyperactive cardiovascular and airway disorders like hypertension and asthma. So they have found out exactly why it works for lowering blood pressure. Nowadays, we also use yarrow as a powerful antiviral, and it's also antibacterial and antifungal to a lesser degree, but still pretty effective. And we have a couple of studies on that that I want to show you. And this first study is on researchgate.net, and it's antimicrobial activity of an Achillea millefolium in November of 2020. Okay, so down here under the results and discussion, they used a hydroalcoholic extract, which is, of course, water and alcohol. And they're saying that it exhibited some weak antimicrobial activity toward these two, but it had strong antimicrobial activity against staph. And then they found with the ethanol extract of the aerial parts of yarrow, and it was found to be effective against B. cereus and Salmonella enteriditis. And those are both like food poisoning like bacteria. So, but they were found effective against that. So that I thought that was interesting, especially since it's antispasmodic. So, it might be, very useful in cases where you think you might got a slight case of food poisoning. And then this one was very interesting. It's on pubmed.gov, and it was only released yesterday, May 31st, 2022. Today is June 1st. So it is an investigation on anti-coronaviral potential of Yarrow tea. And down here, they found out that the Yarrow that the cells of SARS and COVID-2, that the Yarrow caused disintegration of the virus membrane. So basically, it killed the virus. And it says that it provides a scientific basis for the mechanism underlying Yarrow's antiviral and anti-inflammatory properties. So I just thought that was very interesting that it was effective against coronaviruses. We know and have used it traditionally and for a while now against like influenza and different viruses like that. And it's very good in children because it is a febrifuge. So this is just kind of nice that they found out exactly how it works against coronaviruses, because even the common cold is a coronavirus. So I just thought that was very interesting. And we also have studies that show that Yarrow is immune enhancing, which we kind of knew, and immunomodulating. So I thought that was really interesting. So we'll look at a couple of those. Okay, and this first one is from the Journal of Microbiology, Immunology, and Infection from June of 2012. And it is a review of immunomodulators in the Indian traditional healthcare system. And it is going over several of the herbs, but Yarrow is one of the ones that is included in this. And it goes over several different ways that they are immunomodulating. And it shows down here that they use the leaves of the yarrow plant, and otherwise they're anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, antipyretic, which means it lowers fever, and diuretic. Okay, and then on down here it shows us what they observed, what they observed when they tested the plants. So down here it is, yarrow. The alcoholic extract of the leaves exhibit significant stimulatory effect on the immune function. So in other words, it stimulates the immune system, but it also showed an increase in the delayed type of hypersensitivity response. So it not only stimulates the immune system, but it delays the hypersensitivity response. So that is how it is immunomodulating. And then over here on, this is on ScienceDirect.com, we have Herbal Biomolecules and Healthcare Applications. This is in 2022. And this is Herbal Immunomodulators. And it basically, right here, it goes through several of the ways that they work. And this is plants from genus Achillea, which is the yarrow, and several others that decrease these levels and increase these, so that it modulates the immune system to keep it from being too active or too inactive. And then as I was researching for the immunomodulating effects, I came across this, and I thought it was too interesting not to share. It's something that's new to me too, and I'm going to be honest, this was almost overwhelming, all the wonderful uses for yarrow, to try to know even what to include in this video. But this one is just really wonderful. It's a study on Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, MS, and strokes. And of course, MS is an autoimmune disorder, so I thought that might be the reason, but it's apparently it's working against all of these neurological diseases. Okay, so you can find this on researchgate.net, but it is from the Iranian Journal of Basic Medical Sciences. And it's called Bioeffectiveness of the Main Flavonoids of Achillea millefolium in the Pathophysiology of Neurodegenerative Disorders, a review. Let's see. Let me see if I can find a date on it. In 2017. Now, in this study, they went through just the straight yarrow by itself, the whole plant, and then these three of its constituents, apigenin, luteolin, and camphophyrol. And it goes through how each of them worked on the diseases in question. And there's a good little chart down here. It goes through, it does a, if you want to go read it, it goes through all of them and shows exactly what it does. But there's a good little chart down here I want to show you all. And this is the effects of Achillea millefolium, which is our yarrow, on neurodegenerative disorders. So for MS, it decreased the inflammatory responses, disease severity. It did all of these. It prevented relapse, suppressed behavioral deficits, modulates the immune system. Of course, that's an autoimmune disorder. And then, I mean, it goes through all of them. With Alzheimer's, it inhibits the AB-induced neuronal death, decreased memory impairment. It just goes through all of these, that it helps how it works with each of these diseases, even in stroke. Of course, we would expect this from yarrow because a stroke a lot of time is a clot lodging in the brain. So it decreases the infarct volume. An infarct is where the clot in the brain will keep the blood flow from going to a part of the brain. So it decreases the risk of stroke, has neuroprotective. I mean, it's just, to me, this is just an awesome study. And I think it's well worth reading, especially if you know anybody with any neurodegenerative disorders. This is on researchgate.net. I'll go back to the top. And here are all the authors, if you want to look at that. And this is just pretty amazing. And then, as I said, I was a little bit overwhelmed with all the wonderful uses for yarrow. There's studies on it being anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, anti-diabetic, and the list goes on. I'm just going to show you a couple of things and then we'll move on. Okay, and real quick, this was done in 2013. Antispasmodic effects of yarrow extract in the isolated ileum of a rat. And this is where they took a 70% ethanol extract of the aerial parts of yarrow, and they tested it on rats, and they found that it inhibits contraction of the smooth muscle and can be used for eliminating intestinal spasms. So, stomach cramps especially, or vomiting, I think it might have a use for it in that way. And here is the study on the hydroalcoholic extract, so water and alcohol, improved blood glucose, liver enzymes, and lipid profile compared to metformin in diabetic rats. So this was done in 2020, and I'll let you all go and read that for yourself. And then the last thing here is this little mini review on yarrow. It was done in 2013, and they got the guys just going over all of the things that they have found in studies: hemorrhoids, headache, bleeding disorders, bruises, cough, influenza, pneumonia, kidney stones, high blood pressure, menstrual disorders, fever, rheumatoid arthritis, gout, osteoarthritis, hemorrhagic disorders, chickenpox, cystitis, diabetes, indigestion, dyspepsia, which is the gas, eczema, psoriasis, and boils. So he brought all those to light. Like I said, I was just a little overwhelmed. There's just a whole lot of uses for this plant, so it's well worth harvesting. Okay, so now we're just going to move on to how to identify yarrow. The first thing we're going to look at are the yarrow leaves. And these little leaves will come out of the ground first thing in the spring. They look like just little miniature yarrow leaves. They don't change at all. They come out of the ground looking like little feathers. You can see there's a central vein here, I guess, or stem. And then they have all these little like little feathers coming off to the sides. And then we have the stem, and the stem is rough and kind of has little lines in it, and it's bristly. It's not really hairy as much as I would just say it's bristly. There's a close-up. You can see the leaves with the little bristly stem. And then the flower will appear, and it's usually, late in the spring, closer to summer, and it'll start blooming. As you can see, there's a little cluster of flowers, and they each have a little bitty yellow center to them. So, they're distinct, even though they're tiny. And here's a close-up of the flowers. This is what it's going to look like. Like here is when it's starting to bloom out. A little bristly stem, your little feathery leaves, and then your clusters of white flowers. They can also be light pink. When you start getting into too many of the different colors, you get into a different species. So, you want to watch that. Just try to get the wild ones if you can. But I think they all have medicinal purposes. Now we're going to look at a couple of the lookalikes. I did do a video on poison hemlock so that, you can look at it. I'm going to go through it really fast here, but if you want to look at it a little bit closer, go and watch that video on poison hemlock. Yarrow is listed on Google as one of the lookalikes for poison hemlock, so a lot of people are afraid to try to harvest yarrow, which is a shame because they really don't look all that much alike. As you can see here, these are yarrow leaves on the left, poison hemlock leaves on the right. You can see they're very different. Very blown up. The yarrow leaves may look like the poison hemlock leaves, but in person, these little leaflets are a whole lot larger. These look more like needles, like pine needles or something compared to that, even though they are feathery. So they do look a whole lot different. The stem of the yarrow is bristly and rough, whereas a poison hemlock stem is smooth, and it usually will have purple splotches on it, but it is always smooth. And of course, the yarrow flower, they both have little clusters of white flowers, but the hemlock flower is a lot tinier, and they're not as, like you can tell each one of these yarrow flowers has a little middle to them. They're a lot larger than the poison hemlock flower, and they're also tighter together. The hemlock is usually, spread out like a little umbrella. And then mountain mint is actually, to me, it is the most probably the most probable lookalike that you could get it confused with. Although mountain mint is totally edible and it won't hurt you if you make a mistake. So the flowers, see, they're similar, but yarrow, you're going to have the little distinct middle to them. Whereas in mountain mint, it's a little harder to see. They're less organized. The stem and the leaves. You see, in the yarrow, you have the feathery leaves. In mountain mint, the leaves are not, they're just, they're very thin, but they don't have the organized little feathery look to them. So, and you can also smell of the mountain mint and smell the minty flavor or the scent to it. Now we're going to go over real quick processing yarrow. I know this video is getting a little long. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is harvest the above ground parts when the herb is in full bloom. Now, I always harvest the flowers and the leaves. As you saw in some of the studies, they only use the leaves, so that is your choice. You can, if you want to just harvest leaves, that's fine. And they have a nice straight stem that you can just bundle them together and hang them upside down by their stem in a dry shaded place. And then you can store the leaves and the flower. You want to store them as whole as possible until you're ready to use them, and then you kind of crush them up, and that way they'll stay fresher. But you can use them for teas, and then you can also powder some to use as a styptic for your first aid kit. Go ahead and powder those. You don't want to be trying to powder up yarrow if you're bleeding. You want to go ahead and have some powder in a little jar or a little container ready to pour into the wound. You can make it into a tea and use it daily, or you can use it 3 or 4 times a day if you've got a virus. But, if you want to use it for immunomodulatory or that sort of thing, you just use it daily. You want to steep a teaspoon of dried herb in 8 ounces of boiling water, cover it and let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes, and then strain and sweeten as desired. So if you want to bring in your harvest, this is what my harvest looked like. The first thing I did was pulled off the leaves and the flowers. And then I just chopped them into little tiny pieces. And then I tinctured some of the leaves in 50% pure grain alcohol in a 1:2 or a 1:3 ratio. Or you can go ahead and folk tincture it in vodka, or half Everclear and half water for 6 weeks. And you shake it every day. You can use it as an antihypertensive, immunomodulator, antiviral. You saw all the uses for it. You want to take 1 to 3 droppers full daily. And of course, a dropper full is where you squeeze the little dropper, you put it into the liquid, and you let it go. That right there is considered a dropper full. Your dropper is not going to be full. It'll be about half full, but that's what you use 1 to 3 times a day. You can use it in children. It's completely safe for children in appropriate dosages. Like a lot of people love to use it as an antiviral or antipyretic, which means fever lowering, because high fevers are scary in children. It's okay to let them run a fever up to a certain point, but at when it gets above 102 or so, you want to start trying to keep the fever down. So that they don't have febrile seizures. So also immune enhancing. If your kid gets exposed to the flu, they go to their friend's house, and then you find out later they have the flu, or they had a stomach bug at that house, you might want to give them some yarrow in their apple juice to fight off whatever their body is trying to get. You want to help their body to fight it off ahead of time. It's not going to hurt anything. So, I'm all for preempting viruses. Now, I also place some of the leaves and flowers in olive oil or another conditioning oil and infuse it for 2 weeks for use as anti-inflammatory salves or as a rub for varicose veins. Now, this one that I made a couple of days ago, I put it in coconut oil because the person I have in mind that's going to use this does not appreciate anything greasy. So coconut oil is a whole lot less greasy. And so that's why I infused it in that. But you can put it, in any skin conditioning oil and just go ahead and infuse it. And a lot of people love it for varicose veins. And that is the end of the video on yarrow, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, just go ahead and put them in the comments, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Please be sure to like and share and subscribe to the channel if you've not done it already. And thank you very much for listening, and God bless you.